Brothers and sisters, God bless you. This is Pastor Ambrose Carroll with Green the Church. Here to let you know once again that the race is on. We are here today with our friend Suzette Chaumette, and we are so very pleased to have her as Green the Church continues to talk about the race, which really is an acronym for our values that center around resilience, what it means to be Aboriginal, what it means to have courage, and what it means to be an empowering institution. We believe that the race is on in so many ways. I don't have to tell you what's going on in our geopolitical sphere here in these United States of America. When we look at the environment, we are in a race to bring our planet back into balance. When we look at what's going on, even in our communities and in interpersonal state, the race is on because time is always winding up. Someone said the other day, we usually don't have as much time as we think we do. And so we are in a race to live better, to do better. We are a part of the human race. We acknowledge racism and all of the components that come with that. But we are here at Green the Church to kind of move towards a more balanced place and space. And glad to have you all with us. Again, our friend Suzette is here, and I want to share who this sister is, who is foundational to community. Suzette is a health scientist with 20 years of international and domestic patient engagement experience for clinical and community settings, including the Permanente Medical Group, Louisiana Office of Public Health, UC San Francisco, UC Berkeley, and Zamni Lausanne, Partners in Health, Haiti. Her expertise lie in patient engagement, developing multilingual patient-facing content, health and wellness, communication, and workshop facilitation. Suzette holds a BA in biological science from Holy Names University and a Master's of Public Health in community health science from Tulane University School of Public Health and Tropical Medicine, and is a cultural humility facilitator. I like that. She's a cultural humility facilitator. All of us need humility if we're going to bring the world back into balance. She is the founder of Chaumette Counseling. Suzette believes in strong collaborations and consults with public and private institutions to develop programs that support effective, efficient partnerships between client and provider. Again, we're so very glad to have Suzette here with us. Why don't you say hello to all of the people?
Hello, and thank you so much for inviting me to be here today. I'm so glad to be here.
Indeed, indeed. We've done so much work together, even in the Berkeley community, and even Green the Church, as we are now nationally, and the work that we are doing in the state of California, it is due to a lot of the facilitation that she's had walking alongside of us, helping to strategize and put things together. And so she wears a lot of hats. She comes with the power behind her back. I call her Mother Nature. She comes with the power of queendom, and she comes with the power of ancient wisdom. And we respect that highly and fully. Listen, why don't you tell us your story?
Thank you so much for all of that and that beautiful introduction. So I grew up here in the Bay Area. I grew up in Oakland. And so much of my teachings at home were around food and food justice. My mother was a gardener, and she loved to cook and eat and cook for people. Anytime somebody would come to our door, she always had something that she could prepare for them and sit them down at the table and talk. And it was a place where I saw her counsel people. They would come to her for her wisdom. And so as I grew up, I saw food as more than just eating. It was about how we bring community together.
Yeah.
And so when I went to college, I wanted to study how our bodies were affected by food, both positively and negatively. You know, we hear all about health disparities all the time, that Black people have worse health outcomes than white people. And, you know, in school, we take that as kind of a fact, right? That these are things that we just have to accept as true. But then as my career evolved, I realized, wait a minute, there's got to be something at the root of that, truly. Like if we go further back, what is causing all of these problems like obesity and heart disease and high blood pressure and diabetes? And it all came back to one thing, two things really: food and lifestyle.
Mm.
And then that got me thinking about, well, why is it that some people have better access to food than others? And, we always hear about redlining as a housing issue, but we don't talk about redlining in terms of store access. So I just want everybody who's listening right now to think about the closest store to where they are sitting right now. So just imagine where the closest store is. And is that where you do your shopping? Is that where you buy your snacks? Is it a corner store? Is it a liquor store? Is it a full service grocery store? When I started asking that question wherever I found myself in different neighborhoods, I started to recognize a pattern, which most of us would recognize if we just think about it. It's easy to see that in certain neighborhoods, there's just a corner store. And most of the time, those corner stores have chips and sugary snacks and soda. And, they might have some bottled water. They might even have a small produce section. But for the most part, what's in those stores is not the healthiest food for you. Cigarettes and alcohol are also included in there.
Yeah.
And so as I started to think about how I wanted to have an impact in public health, it was really at the community level where we can find out what's affecting people in their everyday lives so that we can help them develop strategies and tools for themselves and their families, and then start to share that with their communities around them. And, I'm taking the model that my mom had and now evolving it in the public health space.
Wow. I think that's so tremendous. We, talk a lot, in this space, right? This kind of Black church environmental space. And those words haven't always hung out together, right?
Mm-hmm.
Black community environmentalist has always, been this conflict to the point that the assumption is that things about the land and the earth and where food comes from are things that we're not interested in.
Mm-hmm.
Reality is there are things that we have purposefully, been separated from. So when you say redlining was not just about the houses, no, it's about
Right.
everything, right?
Right.
It's about taking us from where we were as Aboriginal people, even as people who worked the land in slavery and sharecropping and owning our own land and owning farms, to place us in urban centers away from land was a part of the strategy, I think, that makes us unhealthy, right?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so my life piece. So we try to at Green the Church. We may be talking about environmental justice sometimes. Sometimes we're talking about building efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we're talking about environmental justice, petrochemicals. But for me, a lot of it comes back down to health, and it comes back down to some of the very basic pieces, like the question you asked about, where you live. I live in West Oakland, and so the closest food source for me, my children are now, 15, 16, to say, hey, Dad, can I go to the store? Right. That means they
Mm-hmm.
want to go get some Pepsi, they want to go get some donuts, some chips,
Mm-hmm.
right? Right. Because that's what's at that place, right? And what does that mean? And as a parent, what does that mean for me? And what should I do in that space? And what are alternatives? And what should be the rules around that piece? Like those things come up for me. Do you run
Mm-hmm.
across those things as you teach and talk and discuss? Like, how do you help parents? How do you help equip us, right,
Mm-hmm.
to say what's normal, right?
Mm-hmm. So that's a really good question because, when we get to a certain age, we want independence. We want to be able to make choices about what we buy and what we eat.
Yes.
And we do have to have rules around it as parents so that we know that our kids are being set up to eat healthier. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with an occasional bag of chips or an occasional soda, but these can't be every day. We already know that when we eat things that are high in salt, hypertension can result. And that's over time, right? So we eat some chips today, and then again, in 10 days, that's not a problem. But when it happens over and over, day after day, that can contribute to worse problems later. The same thing is with soda. It's not just about diabetes, it's also about tooth decay. It's also about your heart functioning. And what we often don't pay attention to is what happens, let's say if when you read the back of a chip bag, it might say 50 milligrams of salt is in this chip bag. I try to tell people, just imagine taking a salt shaker and pouring out 50 milligrams of salt. Just pour it onto a plate or in a bowl, and then think about eating that. Nobody would do that. But because it comes with other flavors and it's tasty, and it's something that, and then there's the crunch, it makes us want to have it.
It does.
But if we can imagine these sugars and salts being separated from the food that we're eating, and every time we eat that, or every time we drink that soda, a soda has something like 50 milligrams of sugar in. Is it milligrams or grams? I think it's grams. I don't even have a soda here to look at, but it's 20 teaspoons of sugar in soda. And so if you think about just eating that, it gives parents a sense of, okay, do I really want my kid to be eating all of that over and over and over?
Yeah.
And establishing the rules is tricky, because you always want to make your kids think it's their idea, right? So that's really the the key. In my house, I always try to make them think it's their idea.
Wow.
And I also make them buy it. If they want it, they ask me for money to buy
You
something.
just said something.
Right. Yeah. You want that? You got to buy it. I don't have any money. Well, that's a shame. And so I do flex my power in that way. Like, if you want to buy those things, you do have to have the resources to do it, because it's a long-term teaching around how to utilize resources, how to understand how much you're spending.
Yeah.
And, I also have a body of work that's about creating generational wealth, right? So if our kids are constantly spending our money, they don't understand the value of it. And so if they're like, I got to spend $7 on some chips and a soda and, some candy, dang, $7. What could I do differently with that? So it's over and over.
Wow. So there's a reality. So there's a difference between what they really, really want with your money than what they really, really want with their allowance, right?
That's right. That's right.
I really want it. If you're going to buy it, if I have to buy it, I may not want it as much.
That's right.
All right. All right. Listen. We're getting all kinds of advice here today. This is so powerful. Tell me what happened to us. So of course, I'm probably some years over you, but I remember growing up, and in the early 70s, so my family, there are 3 boys and then there are 3 girls. And even though we had the same parents, I often say we grew up in different households, right? Because things changed. So in the early 70s, going to a church, and that church in the inner cities, there's always, after church, there's always a store across the street, right? I remember going into the first store. We had the First Baptist Church in St. Louis, Missouri. We go into the store. You had to put a quarter in the pop machine. I think we called them pops then. And you had to stick your hand in that cold door. You open up the refrigerator door and pour that thing out, right?
Yeah.
The sugar content was a little bit different, right? I think it may have been real sugar, but I remember being, 7, 8, 9, and I couldn't really have those things. Couldn't really buy candy from the store. Like, we really, because my parents, I always tell people I'm one generation out the sticks. I tell them I'm from Oakland, California. The family's originally from Hollywood, that's Holly, Louisiana, down in the woods. So when they came out, their experience with this kind of food was new, I think. But something happened along the way that these things became more normative. So what happened to us in food, our relationship with food, the
Mm,
things that, our parents were, it seemed like they were able to eat and eat the fried chicken and eat the catfish and live well for long.
mm.
So what happened and what's the difference between their experience with food and our experience with food?
So I want to go back to come forward. You mentioned something in your last question about our food being taken away from us and our access to food being taken away. And, prior to enslavement, we had a much different relationship with food in our communities, how we grew food, how we ate food, how we cooked food. It was all together where there was much more a community culture around food from the seed to the culinary. Right now, we see a lot of people focus on eating together. Sunday dinners is one example, people having meals together at the end of the day, but we don't know where our food comes from.
Wow.
Right? We go to the grocery store, we pick up a bunch of things, but we don't know where it grew. So if we get a salad, that lettuce, the carrots, the tomatoes, the broccoli, the cauliflower all came from different farms. We
Yes,
don't know what farms they came from. The produce man might not even know where the food came
that's
from.
true.
And I always think about how many hands touch that food, right? So they put the seed in the ground, then somebody's got to weed it, then somebody pulls it out the ground, then it goes into a bin, then that goes to a distribution center, then it goes to be packed. No, so it goes to be washed, then it goes to be packed, then it goes on a truck to go to the grocery store. Then the produce man takes it out, then he puts it on the shelf, then somebody comes along, they touch it and they try to figure out which one is for them, then they put it back. Then you come along and you take it and you put it in your basket. That's a lot of hands that has touched your food, right?
That make me feel some kind of way. That makes me feel sad. That makes me feel some kind of way.
I hope so, because we're so disconnected from our food that we don't even realize how many places it's been before it goes into our mouth. And what do we do when we get an apple, for example? We take it, we rinse it under the sink, the faucet for 10 seconds, and then we take a
Yeah.
bite, right? And I think what's happened over the last two generations, because we're not that far removed from growing our own food, we're not that far at all. The food system, the industrial food system, these huge farms that grow corn and grow, the things that go into our food. So corn syrup is now in our food versus real sugar.
That's right.
We have high fructose corn syrup, and that's one thing that I want the listeners to take note of. Whenever you're looking at labels, see if it has high fructose corn syrup. If it does, put it down. Don't buy that. High fructose corn syrup is not even a real sugar. And it also makes it so that we hold on to more fat in our bodies. It also makes our children more excitable and hard to, like, they get really excited, they get amped up, they're running around. When people say, oh, they had some sugar and so they're
Yeah.
super excited. It's not, that's
It's
not
not
just
regular
real
sugar. Wow.
sugar. That's high fructose corn syrup.
That's a
So
drug, then.
it is a
That's a
drug.
drug.
It is a drug. And so it's lower cost than real sugar. And so they put it in our foods. They put it in jams and jellies and syrups and ketchup, and it's in so many things. So that's one big change that's happened is we're getting away from real food. An apple today has less nutritional content in it than 25 years ago. You'd have to eat 5 apples today for the same apple 25 years ago. That's not just about, GMO foods, but it is about the soil that we're planting in does not have as many nutrients. And when I say we, I'm not talking about we, I'm talking about the industrial farms.
Right.
Because the model that
Right.
I'm teaching is get back to knowing your food, get closer to your food so that you know how to nourish your own soil. So, one of the things I teach people about is always save your eggshells. And then when you have, a dozen eggshells, you crush them up like with a mortar and pestle, or you can put it in a blender or food processor, and you put that in your soil. And that gives your soil more calcium.
Oh.
we need calcium, right? We're told all the time for healthy bones, you need calcium. And
Right.
so if you grow some broccoli in the soil where you put the eggshells, your broccoli will have more calcium in it than the broccoli from the grocery store.
Wow.
And so I tell people to get closer to their food so that they know exactly what they're putting in their bodies. And I'm saying, fire these industrial farms. The more we
Yeah.
can bring food into our communities and into our environment, the less we have to rely on people and systems that are not intending to feed us well. They're
Yeah.
not. If they were, we wouldn't have diabetes so much in our communities. We would not have obesity so much in our communities if they were concerned about our health. And we talked about food deserts earlier, but it is food apartheid.
Yeah.
These are systems that were put in place to minimize how many stores we have close by us. That didn't happen by accident.
Correct.
The corner store didn't land there by accident.
Correct.
It was about city planning and city government saying, this neighborhood over here can have a really beautiful grocery store. As a matter of fact, they can have two within a 2-block radius.
That's right.
Over here in this neighborhood, how about we put one corner store here, and then a mile away we'll put another one.
Yeah.
And we're going to make those people travel all the way across town
If they
to
want.
get to, if they can get over there, if they've got the transportation, if there's a bus line, if there's all these things. But there are barriers put in our way to get food, and food has been used as a weapon against us.
Right.
And this is why we suffer so much from all these chronic diseases. But it doesn't have to stay this way. And I don't
That's
want
what.
people to lose
Yes.
hope or faith, because it is possible to change these systems within our own neighborhoods.
Well, somebody said, if you know better, you can do better.
That's right.
And the reality is, and again, this is the race. So we talk about being resilient, right?
Mhm.
We talk about being aboriginal, but we also talk about courage and empowerment.
Yeah,
A lot of times we talk about things in our community. That THEY, you got to watch it.
that's right.
A lot of times we talk about what they do, right? They put a store in, they took the store out. They had the bank here, they took the bank out, right?
Hmm.
Right. And the
Hmm.
question becomes, do you have any power in this scenario? And because if your grandmother knew that you could not have collard greens because they took the store out, she'd roll over in her graves, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Because she knew how to put seed to ground and grow greens, right? Like our
Yeah.
people, you talk about being poor. Like my dad used to talk about not having shoes, right? In the winter, he talked about, his mother making biscuits. They could
Hmm.
talk about, not having a lot of protein. They might talk about eating some coon, right? But
Hmm.
the reality is, and I'm old enough to have been on, I used to say my grandfather had a farm. He just lived in the country, but I'm old enough to have been in the country and to see the corn growing. I'm
Hmm.
old enough to be out and help pick the peas. I'm old enough to reach down and pick up the watermelon off the ground. Did
Hmm.
not have running water, right? But the nutrients, right, in that food, right, says that no, there's no steaks on the table, but we wasn't starving. You know what I mean? And our
Right.
relationship to the soil. I watched my granddad as he planted, as he chopped wood, as he moved around, as he grew 10 children to be healthy, right? To be physically healthy, right?
Yeah.
And that's a part of the narrative and things that are lost. And we begin to look down on those places and those spaces where people, you say you were poor, but the reality is, and all of us didn't move to California or Detroit. Some of us just moved 20 minutes, was 20 minutes now because there's an expressway, moved an hour away into these urban centers with the same reality that you and I are talking about. The
Hmm.
farm, the country is still there where you could still put seed in ground. But we moved to urban environments, and then we're talking about we're in a food desert. So some of it is like it is we still have mental chains around the power that we have.
We do. We do have these mental chains. And I want to tell everybody out there, we also know how to create for ourselves.
All right.
We know what to do. We know how to do it it is indigenous to us. It is about just changing our minds about what's possible. You know, first of all, to say something is country always makes it feel like it's distant from us, right?
Yes.
That it is not us. Like, I don't want to be country because I don't want to seem poor. But there is a lot of beauty in being in the country. There's open space, there's trees, there's where you can relax, you can hear the river bubbling by, you know,
Yes.
you can talk to your neighbor without there being any interruptions. There's not a bunch of cars going by. So I want to also reframe what it means to be country.
Yes.
The other part is that much of what I'm talking about can be done in apartments
All
and
right.
in urban spaces. And
Wow.
when people have a home, if you have a lawn, that lawn is doing nothing for you except being pretty.
Right.
But at least turn part of that into an edible space. And I've talked about growing food forests, and they can be small food forests, but you grow 7 layers of food. And I have a course on it, so I can talk a little bit more about that. If you go to befoodindy.com, there's more information about how to grow a food forest. But what you do is you stack your foods so that you can grow a lot in a small space. And again, you can do this in an apartment as
So
long
wait,
as you
wait, wait,
got a
wait, wait.
sunny window. Mm,
Let me stop you. So what you're
okay.
saying, and I know I want you to tell us now about food indie, because what I hear you saying is that, and it's good to rehearse, redlining, geopolitics,
Yeah.
whatever people's happening, the industrial food system, all that
Right.
stuff is pretty big, right? And then the question is, so can we do anything about it? And it sounds like food,
Absolutely.
right, that you have started 4 years ago as someone who works in the public health space, that you're giving people some handles, like you can actually help me to grow food and herbs at
Yes.
my house. Like that's what
Yes.
you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. And you see,
Oh,
I can't even let you finish your question because I'm so excited about it and the
I'm just
possibilities
about
for
it.
us.
That's good. Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
food indie is all about food independence and learning about small ways that you can grow your own food. So I always tell people you could start with herbs. If you don't have an outdoor space, there are 4 things that you can grow right in your house. You can grow garlic, green onions, lettuce, and greens, all right in your house. Those are things that you don't need any land for, because so many times people will say, well, I don't have any land, so I got to wait to get some land before I can grow some food. Not true. That's ideal, but you can start off with one window box and grow all the things I just told you. And that's where you start.
Wow.
And if you let those same things grow so that they now grow flowers, you can collect the seeds and save them for next year. If you have an outdoor space, like I said, if you have a lawn and you take even if you take like a parking space size,
Okay.
you know how much food you can grow in one parking space size? A lot. And you can do it all in pots. So that's something else that I'm somebody who has, I'm getting a little personal, but I have not been housing secure for a few years. So
Okay.
I've moved around a lot.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And that means that whenever I grow things, I have to put them in pots so that when it's time to go, I can take my food with me.
Oh, you did say pots. P-O-T.
Pots, POTS.
I heard that.
So you can grow tomatoes in pots, greens in pots, potatoes in pots, green onions in pots, all of that. The only thing that's hard to grow in pots are fruit trees, but that's only because eventually those trees need a lot more root space. But you can start them. You can also grow edible flowers like nasturtiums. These are things that grow all over the place. And if you look them up, nasturtiums, you see them on the sidewalks, you see them everywhere. Both the flowers and the leaves are edible and they're highly nutritious. So when you talk about protein, so many people say that they have to have a meal that includes meat. And what I'm saying to everybody is turn that on its head. Your meal can have meat as a side dish and
That's right.
your vegetables and grains and everything else as the main meal. So if you have yourself like some greens and some potatoes and onions and greens together, so good. And then, a drumstick. that can be a complete meal, and you'll feel less heavy. Like you won't get the itis as easy. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah,
you'll
yeah,
feel lighter, and that food goes a much longer way. So I'm saying take back control over your food. You do not have to eat by the plate method or the food pyramid or anything like that. But I'm going to encourage more of us to put more green on your plate. And, there's also this story of my kids don't like vegetables. Well, if you just steam them, or if they're too soggy, yeah, they might not like them. But what you might want to do is help your kids be in charge. Here's another example of letting them think it's their idea. So I like to go to the grocery store and I tell my kids, look at all these beautiful fruits and vegetables. Which one do you want to pick? I don't know. They'll just pick anyone. So they go in there, all right, here's a carrot. Okay, well, get a few more of those. I used to play this game with my kids, find the ugliest fruit or vegetable.
uh-huh.
And then when they would get it, they'd put it in the basket, and then it was a whole game. When we got home, we would cut up the ugliest fruit and vegetable, and then we cook it and be like, this is the ugly one. Let's eat that ugly one, you know? And so sometimes it's about the delivery. And that's how I approach community engagement in general with
Yeah.
Food Indie, is getting people to recognize how important it is to themselves and to their families, because these concepts around saving the planet, people are like, I can't save myself. How can I think about the whole planet?
Yeah.
Or it's so overwhelming. I don't even know where to plug in.
Yeah.
But what I want for all of our listeners to hear is that it's possible to make these changes today. It's possible to grow your own food. Not all of it. You'll never be able to grow all of it, but you can grow a good amount. And once you start eating what you've made, what you've created, what you've planted,
Yeah.
there's something that's magical about that.
Now that's where I wanted to go.
Okay.
And then you used a powerful word. I like that word. This is green the church. And even as you talked about your children and you give them the experience of the food, even if they pick it out.
Mm-hmm.
Problem is that we don't like the vegetables, like you say, because we don't know what it is, right?
Yeah.
And we don't know it. So even
Mm-hmm.
to give an introduction, oh, this is the ugly vegetable. Okay, now I know it a little bit better. But how much more for people who take bait and catch fish to say, I'm going to now eat that fish, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or then people who take seed and put it in the ground
Mm-hmm.
and experience that together. Oh yes, I'm going to eat that
Yeah.
because that's for me. And we've just moved from the sublime to the metaphysical. We've just shifted to something that I believe that I would quantify as spiritual.
Yes.
So talk to me about the spiritual component of this. And I think
Mm.
because we talk about saving the world is one thing, but I believe like as above, so below.
Yes.
And the reality is saving yourself is saving the world.
Absolutely.
And if you understand that your world is in danger, that your temple, right?
Mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
your temple where your Christos
Mm-hmm.
exists
Mm-hmm.
is in danger, is out of balance, then you have to save that.
Yeah.
You have to save that by connecting. So talk to me about the spiritual component of what you do and how it's held.
So, you know, a big part of my work is inviting people to connect with the natural world
Okay.
in a way that is connecting with their own senses, right? So we talked about the trips to the country, and you know what it's like when you take that first deep breath of fresh air and you notice that the air changes, right? It smells different than the city air. Or when you sit in a rocking chair on a porch and that breeze goes by and you hear it and you feel it on your skin.
Yeah.
Or when you see a fox in the distance running by and it stops and it looks at you and you look at it and you're like, is it going to run away or is it going to stay? And sometimes we get scared and we might stomp to make it run, but sometimes if you just sit back and watch it, it'll watch you
Together.
And there's an exchange that happens that is deeply spiritual, because you know that there is not a separation between the both of you in the same way as when there's fear involved, right? Or when there is an unfamiliarity. I see gardening and planting food as connecting us to our ancestors way back. Not just the people whose names we know, but the people whose names we will never know.
Yeah.
That sat in community and in ceremony around trees, around fire, with their hands in the soil, by water. And these are all things that we've been disconnected from, right? The stories that we associate with water are often about death and fear. So we have to repair that relationship. The relationship that we have with trees is about death and fear. But there's so much power in being next to a tree. I mean, even this tree that's right behind you in your background. If I'm not mistaken, that's either a redwood or a sequoia.
It's a sequoia.
Okay. One of my favorite trees. It would take at least 25 people to surround that tree. And if you ever go close to one of those and just stand next to it, there is an experience that you have just with this being that is so large, that will outlive us. That one that's behind you is probably 1,000 years old.
Yeah.
And so when I think of the spiritual in the context of gardening, I think about how we can reconnect with those things that happened before enslavement, that gave our tribes power, that made us come together and to see the sacred in each one of us.
Yeah.
And when we cooked together, we knew that love was going into the cultivation of that food, in the cooking of that food. And when we ate together, our children were nearby. Yeah. They might be running around, but we've all got an eye on them because we're all together. And so when we talk about spirituality and food, they are closely tied to one another. And so in my courses, I always invite people to spend time outside every day, 20 minutes. Just pay attention to the world around you. Use that as your time for prayer. And use it for your time to just sit and observe. See what is around you. Listen to what is around you. Feel what's around you. Because the more we're connected to the world around us, the more we will care about taking care of it. The more we will care about ensuring that those bugs are here so the birds can eat, so that the hummingbirds can fly through and pollinate our gardens.
Yes.
So that the bees survive.
Yes.
You know, so that those larger hawks have something to eat. Those mice, you know, we don't like mice. I don't like mice. I don't like rats.
Right.
If we take care of our ecosystems, they'll be kept in check.
Yeah.
But when it's out of balance is when they start coming in the house, because they're like, there's nothing else outside to eat, so I'm coming for your garbage. And so we gotta take care of our world around us. And the more we see ourselves as just part of it, and let me tell you, we are not necessary to this planet. Humans are not necessary. I'm gonna say it again. We are not necessary. If we disappear, you do know that the world will go on. We are not saving the planet, we're saving ourselves. So that's one thing I want to say to you.
That's good.
Is we're doing all this to save ourselves, because the earth really doesn't need us to survive.
No, in fact, we ourselves have been pretty cancerous upon her.
Oh, we're like a virus. We are the earth's virus. Okay. And the earth is doing all kinds of things to let us know, hey, my immune system is off balance. So I'm going to send you this flood, or I'm going to send you this snowstorm, or I'm going to send extreme heat. and make it so that you cannot live there anymore because you are messing up.
Wow. Well, I think, and this is splendid. Again, understanding life, right? And
Yeah.
what a gift life is, and the ability
Yes.
to be connected to all sentient beings. And I often
Yes.
say that this battle, a lot of people are losing heart when we look at the numbers. Again, this is a race, and
Yes, it
you have
is.
said it well. It is a race for the survival of humanity upon
It
this.
is.
But I often say, people sometimes get discouraged. We have to do this work, and while I do this work, I like to have fun doing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even though we look at the statistics and look at what happens if China and the United States of America don't pull back, if we go to the Paris Agreement and we look at those
Mm-hmm.
agreements and we push forward with fossil fuels, people are saying, well, I'm tired of driving electric cars. It's not enough of this. I'm just going back to gas. And we don't understand that there's always going to be electricity on the planet, but there's only a limited supply of fossil,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And if we keep pushing in a way, it's going to be us, like a virus that the earth will transition and cleanse herself of. And I said, even if it comes down to that, human civilization, we are present. I personally don't believe this is our first round, right?
Right.
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 So, but even if humanity is wiped off of the earth, even if our brother the bee survives, my soul will be happy.
Yes.
Life will still persist, right?
Life will still persist.
And then life will always find a way. But it's being able to love life and to understand that we as human beings are a part of the tapestry. And like you said, not as important to the survival of the planet as the bee.
That's right. That's right.
Right.
And you know, I just want to carry that out just a little bit more. Think about what we do when we see a bee. We want to swat it,
Oh yeah.
get away from it,
Oh
kill
yeah.
it,
A
right?
spider. Yeah.
Spider, same
Right.
thing.
Right. A
And
spider, a bee, a black man, whatever.
a black man.
Man,
Right.
it's going to get you.
Right. And that's problematic because again, we've been separated from understanding that we need bees in order to have food.
That's right.
We have to have bees. There is no way to replace them. I mean, now they're trying to create robots to do the pollination and all that, but come on.
Wow.
Come on. You know, let's just get back to basics. Let's stop trying to control everything. Humans want to always control and innovate beyond what is necessary sometimes.
Yeah.
Let's just get back to basics.
And I don't know if that is simply a human trait. I don't believe it's an Aboriginal trait. COVID was fascinating, right? COVID was fascinating. In a matter of days, with human quiet, to see the animals starting to move in place.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Kind of to see what, life will life if you let it. Right?
That's right.
It's just like the body. If you learn how to fast and stop eating, you'll start healing, right? Like sometimes, like God has placed things on automatic. Just like we often don't fight to breathe, we take it for granted. But sometimes we find ourselves getting in the way of life, and it's about learning to let go and learn to get out of the way.
For sure. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And I think we just have to answer the tough question about how much do we really need and how much do we want? And the things that we want, is it doing more harm than good? And asking, where did it come from? Really, not just Macy's.
Right. Well, I think that's so powerful because that same question, right, is a question we have to ask about ourselves. We have to be more curious.
Yes.
Because our food didn't come from Safeway.
That's right.
And many of us are not simply from Oakland.
That's right.
Right? That we come from a longer lineage, a longer reality. And I like what you said earlier about, again, empowerment. There are things that we know how to do. And we have to continue to encourage each other. Oh, no,
yeah.
You be still long enough. You're talking about with young people, they don't know how to cook. And they know. It's locked within the molecular structure of their DNA.
That's right.
Yes, you know. Yeah.
Yes, and when people are saying young people don't know how to, what role do you play in helping support them to getting to the place that they can do it? We can all be taught and we can all learn, but if we're already told, you don't know how to do that, or you young people don't do this or that, that's not encouraging at all.
That's
But
right.
if you say, you know what, I learned how to can from my grandmother, and I want to show you how to do this, because a lot of young people understand the existential threat that exists with climate change. They understand that their lives are, they can't expect to live as long as we expected to live when we were younger. And so they want to be given tools. And yeah, they got attitudes. I mean, we had attitudes when we were younger.
That's right.
And so, offer something up that will help empower them. Give them a chance to come into the kitchen with you. Give them a chance to learn your favorite recipe. Tell them a story. And their attention span might not be as long as yours was, but then you got to make your story better. You got to practice your story.
Say that again to all of the preachers listening.
If they're not listening, then just make your story better, because young people are curious.
That's
and
right.
They want better for their own lives. And we hold some of those answers, and they do too. So be willing to listen to them and what's on their minds. And when they tell you that they don't feel well, or they're unhappy, or that they're having a hard time paying attention, ask them, what's that about? Tell me a little bit more about that. Make space for them, and they will make space for you, but they're not going to make space for you when you're talking about, you don't listen, and you don't do this, and you don't do that. They'll be like, I'm going somewhere else.
I'm out.
I'm out.
Now, listen, we have learned a lot here today. Let me tell you, and thank you again. You've been listening to Sister Suzette Chaumette, Mother Nature, I call her, behind her back.
I didn't know this. Thank you. I'll take that.
And we are, again, have been so very, very blessed at Green the Church by your words, your candor, your presence, your wisdom. And hopefully this won't be our last time engaging in this format. Would that you would close in your own way. Please share how individuals can contact you. I'm sure there are a lot of people listening who want to really know how to grow food, really want those practical pieces. Yeah. Let us know how we can find you and how we can connect.
Well, thank you again for having me. You can find me at befoodindy.com. That's BEFOODINDY.com. You can also find me on Instagram at Reduce Reuse Suze. So REDUCE Suze, SUZE. And also I'm on TikTok at Food Indie. You can also find me on YouTube on Food Indie. I'm in a lot of places, but just type in Food Indie, FOODINDY, and you will find me. And I have all kinds of tips and tricks for getting started with your food forests. Food forests are not as big as they sound, but you can start growing food. This is a great time of year, right before the spring, to start choosing your seeds and choosing the kinds of plants you want to eat, and always begin with what you love to eat. Don't plant anything that you don't love, because then you're going to spend resources on keeping it growing when you don't even love it. So talk to your family and find out what you would want to grow most, and you can send me a question anytime through any of those platforms, and I am happy to answer questions. I love questions, so send them my way.
Super awesome. Thank you so much, sis. This has been fantastic. Really appreciate you. And again, brothers and sisters, you've been listening to Green the Church, The Race, and here to let you know that the race is on.
Race is on.